From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! More striking revelations from the massive trove of diplomatic cables being published by WikiLeaks. U.S. officials tried to influence Spanish prosecutors and government officials to drop court investigations into torture at Guantanamo, CIA extraordinary rendition flights, and the 2003 killing of Jose Coso, a Spanish journalist who was killed April 8, 2003, when a U.S. tank fired on the Palestine Hotel in Baghdad. We'll get the latest and speak with the brother of the slain journalist. Then President Obama meets with Republicans about Bush-era tax cuts.
We should work to make sure that taxes will not go up by thousands of dollars on hardworking middle-class Americans come January 1st.
This comes in the wake of the president's controversial proposal for a 2-year freeze on the salaries of some 2 million federal workers. We'll speak with Reverend Jesse Jackson. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Revelations continue to emerge from the massive trove of diplomatic cables released by the online whistleblower website WikiLeaks, along with many newspapers around the world. The latest disclosures reveal U.S. officials tried to influence Spanish prosecutors and government officials to drop court investigations into torture at Guantanamo, CIA extraordinary rendition flights, and the 2003 killing of a Spanish journalist by U.S. troops in Iraq. We'll get more after headlines. Among other new disclosures, the documents also show the Bush administration was assured they'd be shielded from scrutiny at British government inquiry into the Iraq War. 2 months before the Chilcot inquiry opened in November of 2009, the U.S. Embassy in London reported that a top British official had vowed Britain would, quote, put measures in place to protect U.S. interests during the proceedings. The British official was quoted saying that while the Iraq War seemed to no longer be a major issue in the U.S., he predicted there would be a feeding frenzy once the inquiry began. As new revelations emerge, the international law enforcement organization Interpol has issued a global arrest warrant for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange over allegations in Sweden. A Swedish court issued an arrest warrant for Assange on charges of rape and sexual molestation last month after the prosecutor initially dropped the case. Assange has denied the allegations and said he's the target of a smear campaign. He's also under investigation in the U.S. and could face charges under the Espionage Act. Assange's current whereabouts are unknown. The soldier accused of leaking the classified documents, meanwhile, is also facing intensified public vilification. Speaking at a book signing, former Arkansas governor and Republican presidential hopeful Mike Huckabee said Private First Class Bradley Manning should be executed.
Whoever in our government leaked that information is guilty of treason. And I think anything less than execution is too kind a penalty.
The Senate has approved what's being called the biggest overhaul of the nation's food safety system since the 1930s. In a 73-25 vote, the Senate authorized the expansion of Food and Drug Administration's regulatory authority and new restrictions on farmers and food companies. The bill allows the FDA to order recalls instead of leaving it up to corporations to do so voluntarily. The bill also requires mandatory safety plans, increases FDA oversight, and makes it easier to determine the source of contaminations. The House passed its version of the measure over a year ago, but it stalled in the Senate until the recent salmonella outbreak that led to the recall of over 500 million eggs. More than a dozen people have died, and thousands have been sickened in recent national outbreaks of foodborne illness. The House version imposes tougher conditions than the Senate's, but House leaders say they'll likely accept the Senate version to avoid a lengthy conference process. Momentum is growing for the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy that bars openly gay men and lesbians from serving in the military. On Tuesday, the Pentagon released a long-awaited study that shows over 70% of service members believe lifting the ban would have positive, mixed, or no results. Defense Secretary Robert Gates said Congress should repeal the law before the end of the year, but then added that the military needs an unspecified amount of time to prepare.
In my view, the concerns of combat troops as expressed in the survey do not present an insurmountable barrier to successful repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. This can be done and should be done without posing a serious risk to military readiness. However, these findings do lead me to conclude that an abundance of care and preparation is required if we are to avoid a disruptive and potentially dangerous impact on the performance of those serving at the tip of the spear in America's wars.
The House has given final approval to two multi-billion-dollar settlements resolving long-standing lawsuits over the mismanagement of Native American land trusts and discrimination against African-American farmers. Some $3.4 billion will be paid out to more than 300,000 Native Americans to settle claims over unpaid royalties on seized lands. Black farmers will receive just more than $1.1 billion for having been systematically denied aid and loans by the Department of Agriculture. President Obama is expected to sign the bill in the coming days. President Obama hosted Republican leaders at the White House Tuesday for their first meeting since the midterm elections. The two sides announced a bipartisan group to resolve an impasse over extending the Bush-era tax cuts for American households earning over $250,000. The Obama administration has signaled it's willing to compromise to extend the cuts. The meeting also covered the stalled nuclear arms reduction treaty with Russia, the extension of unemployment benefits, and the funding of government operations. Obama hailed the talks as a sign of bipartisan cooperation.
I think everybody understands that the American people want us to focus on their jobs, not ours. They want us to come together around strategies to accelerate the recovery and get Americans back to work. They want us to confront the long-term deficits that cloud our future. They want us to focus on their safety and security and not allow matters of urgent importance to become locked up in the politics of Washington. So today we had the beginning of a new dialogue that I hope, and I'm sure most Americans hope, will help break through the noise and produce real gains.
Extended unemployment benefits for nearly 2 million Americans begin to run out today. In other news from Washington, the White House panel on reducing the deficit has delayed a final vote on a package of recommendations that includes widespread cuts to Social Security and Medicare. Panel co-chairs Erskine Bowles and Alan Simpson have proposed raising the retirement age for Social Security to 69 by 2075, decreasing the cost of living benefits for Social Security recipients, imposing new limits on the Medicare health insurance program, ending several middle-class tax breaks, and reducing corporate income taxes. Simpson and Bowles say they've delayed a vote until Friday because they've been unable to gather the 14 votes needed to send their recommendations to Congress. The UN Climate Change Conference continues in Cancun, Mexico. Differences have already emerged in the opening sessions over extending commitments under the Kyoto Protocol and how to monitor countries' compliance with pledges to reduce emissions. Bolivian climate negotiator Pablo Solón renewed calls for the establishment of an international climate tribunal.
Para nosotros es fundamental.
For us, it's fundamental that discussions in Cancun tackle the creation of an international climate tribunal. Because governments that irresponsibly play in a negotiation have to be prone to sanctions. Because the consequences of a fruitless negotiation will be lives, human lives.
Full interview with Ambassador Pablo Solón, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. We will also be covering the Cancun summit meeting in Cancun for all of next week. As the talks continue in Cancun, thousands of people took to the streets of Mexico City in a rally for climate justice.
Well, I think the wrong people are running it. I think they need the workers and farmers in this world running it. Instead of the corporations go to Cancun and make up rules for everybody. The rest of us are not involved. Workers and farmers should be running it, and then we'd know how to do it without destroying people and the environment.
A Pakistani man is speaking out about his attempt to sue the CIA for a U.S. drone strike that killed his brother and his son. Karim Khan has sent a legal notice threatening to file suit if he's not given $500 million within 2 weeks. Khan's 18-year-old son and brother were killed on New Year's Eve when a CIA drone bombed his home in Pakistan's North Waziristan. Khan said the U.S. has been attacking innocent Pakistanis.
We will say to them that these drone attacks you are carrying out are killing poor, downtrodden people. Innocent lives are being lost. You have not been able to kill a single person who your law calls terrorists. You are only killing innocent people, children, women, and the elderly.
In Britain, thousands of students took to the streets Tuesday in the latest protest against a round of education cuts and tuition hikes. The measures were part of a sweeping austerity package unveiled in October.
We've come here because we're absolutely disgusted at what the coalition party is proposing to do. I mean, Nick Clegg even said he'd scrap school fees altogether. Now he wants to increase them 3 times. It's disgusting, and I can't believe that they haven't chose to listen to us. So we're going to come out every possible time we can to fight and to say that we want a right to good education with the fees that we have right now.
And a government review has found that Bank of America was spared tough sanctions for securities law violations because it was dependent on taxpayer aid to bail it out. In a new report, the Securities and Exchange Commission's Inspector General says regulators acted lenient toward Bank of America in settling allegations of unlawful payments in its acquisition of Merrill Lynch. The SEC gave Bank of America a, quote, favorable settlement to ensure its investment banking practices weren't affected. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.